the strongest, fastest warrior in the world, a man no weapon could wound. How did he die from a single arrow? To make his entire body immortal, his mother used her power as a goddess. But there was one spot she forgot. And that one forgotten spot became the root cause of the greatest tragedy in Greek mythology. This is the story of Achilles. In the golden age of Greek mythology, the two most powerful gods of the divine kingdom, Zeus and Poseidon, both fell in love with the same beautiful sea nymph. Her name was Thetis. But there was a prophecy that the son born to Thetis would become more powerful than his own father. Zeus was struck with fear, afraid of losing his power. So he decided to marry Thetis off to a mortal king named Peleus. But no one could have known that this very decision would eventually spark the greatest war the world had ever seen. This was no ordinary wedding. Every god on Mount Olympus attended. From this extraordinary union of mortal and divine was born the strongest warrior Greece had ever seen, Achilles. Thetis could not bear the thought of her son dying as an ordinary mortal. In secret, she carried the infant Achilles down to the underworld, to the river Styx, which held immortal power. It was believed that anyone submerged in these waters would become immortal. She dipped him into the sacred water. But here's where the problem lies. She was holding him by his heel. Because of that, water never touched that one spot. His entire body became impossible to wound with any weapon, except for his right heel, which remained as vulnerable as any ordinary human's. This is exactly where the phrase Achilles' heel comes from, the idea that no matter how strong someone is, everyone has one weak point. Achilles' teacher was Chiron, a wise centaur with the body of a horse and the upper body of a man. His closest childhood friend was Patroclus, a friendship that would later become central to the entire story and change everything. When Prince Paris of Troy took Helen of Sparta, a massive war ignited. As the Greek forces gathered, Thetis presented her son with the greatest question of his life. "My son, if you do not go to war, you will live a long, peaceful life, but no one will ever remember you. If you go to the Trojan War, you will die, but your name will live on forever, immortal. A long life or eternal glory? What would you choose?" Thetis already knew, if Achilles went to war, he would die there, so she devised a plan to save him. Thetis sent the young Achilles to the palace of King Lycomedes on the island of Skyros. To hide his identity, she dressed him as a woman and kept him hidden among the king's daughters. Achilles lived there under the name Pyrrha, dressed in women's clothing among the princesses. But the Greeks had a prophecy of their own, that Troy could never be conquered without Achilles. This is where the most cunning of the Greek warriors, Odysseus, enters the story. Once word reached the Greeks that Achilles was hiding on Skyros, Odysseus and Diomedes disguised themselves as merchants and entered the palace. Odysseus displayed a box filled with beautiful fabrics, gold jewelry, and fragrant perfumes for the princesses. But hidden among these treasures, in an empty space, lay a sharp sword and a shield. While all the other princesses were drawn to the clothes and jewelry, Achilles, still dressed as a woman, found his eyes fixed on the sword. The moment he eagerly picked it up, Odysseus's plan clicked into motion. War trumpets suddenly blared from outside the palace, creating the sound of an attack. Thinking the palace was under attack, the other princesses fled, screaming in fear. But Achilles, he alone instantly tore off his woman's clothing and stood ready for battle, sword in hand. Odysseus's trick had worked. Achilles' true identity was revealed. He was taken to join the Trojan War. On the shores of Troy, Achilles' feats in battle were unmatched. But when King Agamemnon forcibly seized Briseis, the war prize that belonged to Achilles, Achilles withdrew from the war in fury. Without Achilles, the Greek army began suffering heavy defeats against the Trojan forces. Seeing his side being destroyed, Patroclus put on Achilles' own armor and rode into battle to frighten the Trojans. But Patroclus was killed at the hands of Troy's greatest warrior, Prince Hector. The death of his closest friend sent Achilles' rage and grief to their peak. He returned to the battlefield like a lion. In front of the walls of Troy, he killed Hector in single combat, then tied his body to his chariot and dragged it around in a brutal act of vengeance. Hector, the eldest prince of Troy, was deeply beloved by the god Apollo. Seeing the disgrace done to Hector's body, enraged Apollo. And that wasn't all. Earlier, Achilles had insulted Apollo's priests and temples. By this point, the seeds of Apollo's vengeance had already been sown. After King Priam, Hector's father, fell to his knees and pleaded, Achilles' heart softened, and he returned Hector's body. But Achilles' own end was now near. Paris was nowhere near as skilled a warrior as Achilles. An ordinary man's arrow could not kill the immortal Achilles, but Apollo came, unseen, and redirected the path of Paris's arrow. The arrow flew straight and struck the one vulnerable spot on Achilles' entire body, his right heel. The great warrior collapsed. Achilles, a union of god and mortal, died at the foot of the walls of Troy, fulfilling the very prophecy his mother had once foretold, leaving behind an immortal name. Did Achilles die because of his mother's one mistake, or because of the fate he himself chose? Even after thousands of years, the name Achilles still lives on, immortally across the world, as an eternal symbol of the tragedy that exists between man's greatest strength and his smallest weakness. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Drop a comment, like, subscribe, and get ready for the next mythology story.